Tywin Lannister returned to his chambers as if returning to a battlefield after the banners had already fallen. The corridor smelled wrong. The Red Keep always smelled of wax and warm stone and old perfume. But tonight there was iron in the air, a wet metallic tang that turned candlelight sour. A red cloak took one look at him and straightened as though struck. "My lord!" Tywin did not slow. Men moved aside as water parts around a rock. He stepped over a dropped cup, gold, dented, without looking down. He had been in the small council chamber when the message came, a boy trembling through it as if the words were knives. The dwarf gone, the jailer dead, the cells open. Varys vanished. A whisper of laughter somewhere, and the court already beginning to turn its head like a flock of crows sensing carrion. He had thought it would be Tyrion alone. Escape, flight, the humiliations of a father cheated of his rightful punishment. That would have been enough. The first thing Tywin saw upon entering was the bolt in the paneling, driven deep at an ugly angle, as if the wood itself had tried to twist away from it. The second thing he saw was the woman on the floor. Not a serving girl, not a spy in plain dress. Shay lay pale under the torchlight, hair spilled like black ink across stone. The silk shift bunched at her thighs. Her throat had been crushed. The marks were unmistakable, as intimate as fingerprints. For a heartbeat, the room was strangely quiet. Men held their breath. Even the rain seemed to hush. Cersei stood rigid near the hearth, hands clenched so tight her knuckles shone. Her eyes were bright with a rage that could not decide which shape to take. Jaime stood closer to the doorway, half-armored, the stump of his left wrist hidden in shadow, the gold hand catching firelight and throwing it back coldly. His face was set in that expression Tywin had seen on him as a boy before a joust. Fierce, determined, and not entirely honest. QYBURN rose from where he had been crouching beside Shay, smooth as a cat. "My lord," he said softly, as if they were in a sept. Tywin did not look at QYBURN. He looked at the bolt, then at the torn edge of the bed hangings, then at the overturned chair, as though reading the events the way he would read a ledger. Violence had a logic to it if one had the will to see. "He came here," Cersei said. She spat the words. "He came here and failed." Tywin finished, his voice even. Cersei's mouth tightened. Her grief had no place to go. She had already spent it on Joffrey. What remained was venom. "He killed her," she hissed, nodding toward Shay as though the dead woman were the true outrage. "And he meant to kill you, your own son." Tywin's gaze shifted, at last, to the bed. The sheets were rumpled, one pillow knocked to the floor. The room reeked of sweat and perfumed oil, a scent that did not belong to him, not like this. It was not the first time a whore had warmed a powerful man's bed, but it was the first his bed had been made into a weapon. He turned his head slightly. "Leave us," he said. The red cloaks hesitated. Their captain's throat bobbed. Tywin's eyes met his, and the hesitation died. The guards filed out, torches and boots and the faint clink of armor, closing the door behind them. The room felt smaller without witnesses, as if the Red Keep itself were listening. Tywin remained where he was, the bolt in the wall a crude accusation. "Tyrion did not act alone," he said. Jaime's jaw worked. Tywin lifted a hand, silencing him before the lie could gather strength. "Do not insult me with guesses. Varys is gone. The jailer is dead. The tunnels beneath this castle have mouths you have never seen. Someone fed my son the key to them." Cersei's eyes flashed. "I told you what he was. I told you from the day he was born." Tywin looked at her the way he looked at a cracked foundation stone. "You told me what you wanted to believe." Her breath caught, sharp as a sob. For an instant she looked very young, and then the mask returned. "What will you do?" she demanded. "Send riders after him? Hang the guards? Burn Flea Bottom to ash?" Tywin walked to the window. Beyond the glass, King's Landing sprawled under rain, a slick maze of roofs and smoke. The city was a living thing, ravenous, always reaching. He had been brought to the edge of a knife tonight and had not bled. That was not mercy. That was warning. "I will do what I have always done," Tywin said quietly. "I will restore order, and I will ensure that those who think they can reach into my house and steal what is mine learn the cost of it." Behind him, Jaime shifted. "Father," Jaime said, and the word held more than obedience. It held something like regret. Tywin did not turn. "You are the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard," he said. "Your duty is to the king." Jaime's voice lowered. "Tyrion is." Tywin's hand tightened on the stone sill until he felt the grit bite his skin. "Tyrion is a traitor condemned by the realm. Whatever he was to you as a boy, whatever games you played in the halls of Casterly Rock, he chose his path when he murdered the king. He let the sentence settle hard as iron. And tonight, he chose another." Silence stretched. The rain ran down the glass like tears. Tywin felt something cold and bright inside him. Not fear, not grief, clarity. The realm had taught him that enemies wore many faces. Sometimes they wore your name. When he finally turned, his gaze swept over Shay once more, then the bed, then the bolt, and came to rest on his children. "You will both remember this," he said, "because I will." By morning, King's Landing had found new rumors to chew. Some said Tyrion Lannister had flown from the castle on black wings. Some said he had been carried away by demons. In Flea Bottom, men swore they heard a lion roar from the Red Keep in the dead of night and took it as omen or joke, depending on how much ale was left in their cups. Tywin Lannister did not allow the court the luxury of wonder. The small council gathered beneath a sky washed thin by rain. The chamber was colder than it should have been. The hearth gave heat, but not comfort. Tommen Baratheon sat in his chair as if it might bite him. The boy's fingers worried the edge of the table. The crown on his head looked like it belonged to a man grown, and the weight of it made his posture slump. Beside him, Margaery Tyrell looked radiant and calm, hands folded, chin lifted, as if the world could not surprise her. Olenna Tyrell sat like a thorned branch, thin and sharp, her cane angled against the stone. Cersei was rigid at Tywin's left, her grief turned inward where it could fester. Kevan sat opposite, his face a steady thing. Pycelle quivered like a leaf over parchment. Tywin set the tone with a single sentence. "The realm will not see weakness," he said. Pycelle cleared his throat. "There is the matter of the escaped prisoner, my lord. The City Watch." "The City Watch will do as it is told," Tywin replied. "The gold cloaks answer to the crown, and the crown answers here." He placed his hand flat on the table near Tommen's, not touching the boy but anchoring him with proximity. "Any man who aided the escape will be found. Any man who failed in his duty will be punished. Quietly where possible, publicly where needed." Tommen swallowed. Will they hurt my mother?" he asked in a small voice, eyes flicking towards Cersei. Cersei's face softened for a heartbeat, the way a blade might catch light. "No, my love," she said quickly. "No one will hurt me." Tywin's gaze cut to her. Not sharp, not cruel, simply final. "No one will hurt you if you do not endanger yourself," he said, and in that, there was more command than comfort. Margaery's smile shifted, subtle as a curtain moving in a draft. "My lord Hand," she said, voice honeyed. "The city is frightened. The death of King Joffrey, the trial, the unrest. Perhaps a display of unity would soothe the people." Olenna snorted softly, as if the word soothe offended her. "Unity," she echoed. "A pretty word for a noose." Tywin did not rise to it. "The people will be fed," he said, "and they will be kept safe enough to work. That is the unity they require." He turned a page of reports without glancing down. "The granaries will be counted. The docks will be secured. The roads to the Reach will be patrolled." He looked directly at Margaery. "Highgarden's wagons will reach the city without bandits taking their share." Margaery inclined her head. "And in return?" Tywin met her gaze. "In return, your house will continue to profit fro. Stability." The Iron Throne will pay its debts to the Reach as it can. The Crown will honor its alliances. Olenna leaned forward, cane tapping once. And what of the faith? She asked. There are Septons already whispering that the gods are angry. Some would like to put swords in their hands and call it piety. Cersei's eyes brightened at the mention, eager to seize any weapon that would strike at Tywin's control. The faith could help keep order, she said. Men fear the gods. Tywin's voice did not change, but the air did. Men fear steel, he said, and hunger. The faith will pray. The gold cloaks will patrol. The crown will not place blades in the hands of those who answer to another power. He looked at Pycelle. Send word to the High Septon that the crown will make a generous offering for the souls lost in recent tragedy. His eyes moved to Kevin. And send word to Lord Mace Tyrell that his daughter's safety and honor remain the crown's concern. Olenna's eyes narrowed. A generous offering, she repeated. Coins for candles. Coins buy more than candles, Tywin said. Tommen shifted, as if trying to take up less space. Grandfather, he said hesitantly, will you find my brother's killer? Tywin's hand moved, at last, and rested briefly on the boy's shoulder. The gesture was small, almost tender, and all the more unsettling for its rarity. We will find everyone who harmed your family, he said, and we will make the realm understand that such harm is not without consequence. Cersei watched Tywin's hand on Tommen as if it were a theft. When the council dispersed, Tywin remained seated. The maps spread before him like a skinned animal. Lines of ink marked roads, ports, castles, and far beyond them, blank spaces labeled with old names and old fears. The north was a wide smear of white on the parchment, as if winter itself had been spilled there. Pycelle lingered, fluttering. My lord, he ventured. There are other ravens. From the wall. Strange talk. Tywin's eyes lifted. Strange talk is common in old men and cold places, he said. Pycelle swallowed. Yes, my lord. Still. Tywin tapped a finger once on the table. Bring them to me. Jaime Lannister had always thought the White Sword Tower smelled of dust and old vows. The cloaks hung like ghosts. The white book sat on its stand, pages heavy with inked deeds and dead men's glory. It was a place meant to make a man feel small beside history. Tywin made it smaller still. They stood over a table where Tywin had laid out the Riverlands as if it were a carcass he intended to carve. Harrenhal marked in black, Riverrun circled in red. The names of minor lords written like scratches. You will ride within the hour, Tywin said. Jaime's mouth tightened. To the Riverlands. To end a war that should have ended already, Tywin replied. The Freys are useless beyond the cruelty they mistake for strength. The River Lords will keep bleeding until someone makes them stop. Jaime flexed his gold hand, the fingers clicking softly. The sound always reminded him of chains. You want me to threaten them into peace? Tywin's eyes remained steady. I want you to offer them mercy they cannot refuse. Jaime let out a short laugh without humor. Mercy, he echoed. From House Lannister. Do not pretend you have grown squeamish, Tywin said. You killed Aerys Targaryen with your sword and then spent years sulking that people called you what you were. Jaime's face hardened. The old argument rose like bile. I killed him to save the city. Tywin leaned closer, voice low and sharp. You killed him because you were there and you could, he said. It does not matter why. It matters what it bought. He tapped the map near King's Landing. You bought the realm another day. Now you will buy it more. Jaime stared at the inked rivers, at the neat little castle symbols. He remembered the Riverlands in fire and mud, corpses in ditches, women wailing in ruined villages. He had seen what his father called order. You are sending me away, Jaime said quietly, because of Tyrion. The name sat between them like a severed limb. Tywin did not blink. I am sending you away because you are useful, he said, and because you are compromised. Jaime's jaw clenched. He is my brother. Tywin's voice remained calm. He is my son, he corrected, and he made himself my enemy. Jaime's throat worked. You cannot truly believe he killed Joffrey. Tywin's gaze sharpened. I believe the realm believes it, he said. I believe it is convenient for those who wish to weaken us. And I believe Tyrion has always been capable of more than you want to see. From the archway, Cersei's presence prickled. Jaime felt her watching, felt her hunger for Tywin to say the words she loved most. Monster, curse, shame. Tywin's gaze slid, briefly, toward the archway without turning his head. You may come in, Cersei, he said. Cersei stepped forward, skirts whispering over stone. She wore black threaded with gold, mourning twisted into regality. Her eyes went to Jaime first, then Tywin, calculating. You are sending him away, she said. You always send him away when you need him out of your sight. Tywin did not deny it. Your brother will restore order in the Riverlands, he said. You will remain here and restore order in yourself. Cersei's nostrils flared. You speak to me as if I were a child. Tywin's mouth barely moved. Then stop behaving like one. For a moment, the only sound was the soft clink of Jaime's gauntlet against the table edge. Jaime watched Cersei's face, saw fury fight with restraint. She wanted to lash out. She wanted to remind Tywin that she was the Queen Mother, that she had sons and influence and lovers. But Tywin's presence made her remember something older. The way his gaze could strip away pretense as easily as cloth. I will find him, Cersei said, voice trembling with promise. I will find Tyrion, and I will. You will do nothing without my leave, Tywin interrupted. Because if you do, you will make a spectacle, and spectacles invite knives. He looked at Jaime again. Ride. Jaime swallowed. The tower felt suddenly too bright. And if I find him? Jaime asked, though he did not know why he asked. He did not know which answer he wanted. Tywin's eyes were cold, but not empty. Then you will remember what you are, he said. A knight of the Kingsguard, a son of House Lannister, a man who does what is necessary. Jaime turned to go. The white cloak brushed his legs like a shroud. As he passed Cersei, she caught his arm with fingers like iron. Do not fail me, she whispered. Jaime did not answer. He walked down the spiral stairs, leaving behind the white book and the words written in it. Behind him, Tywin's voice continued, already moving to the next problem as if the last had never existed. Send riders to the Crownlands, Tywin was saying. Double the patrols on the Rose Road, and bring me those ravens from the Wall. The Wall did not care about kings. It rose indifferent to banners and bloodlines, a pale cliff against a sky that never truly warmed. Castle Black crouched at its base like a battered dog, smoke trailing from chimneys, the yard hard with ice. Men moved with shoulders hunched, breath steaming. They wore black, but black did not make them one thing. Black only made them cold together. Jon Snow stood above the gate and watched the new arrivals ride in. Crimson cloaks in the yard were wrong. The color looked obscene against the snow. The men beneath them held themselves with a discipline that Castle Black had not seen in years. Their horses well-fed, their boots clean. At their head rode a knight with a stiff posture and a face set as if he expected to be insulted by the very air. Ser Alliser Thorne made a sound of disgust at Jon's shoulder. Lions, he muttered, come to piss on our stones. They came, Jon said. Samwell Tarly shifted, clutching scrolls to his chest as if they might protect him. King's Landing doesn't send men this far unless they want something, Sam said quietly. Jon's eyes stayed on the yard. The Wall had taught him what wanting looked like. Hunger, fear, desperation. These men did not look desperate. They looked like an order being carried out. When the Lannister envoy was brought into the Lord Commander's chambers, he did not remove his gloves. He bowed, shallow and precise. My name is Ser Davin Marbrand, the man said. I bear the hand of the King's seal. Lord Tywin Lannister sends greetings. Lord Tywin. Jon felt the weight of that name in the room the way one felt a storm gathering beyond the trees. He had heard the stories every man in Westeros had. The man who turned the Rains halls into tombs. The man whose gold bought armies and whose ruthlessness kept them marching. What does Lord Tywin Lannister want from the Night's Watch? Jon asked. Marbrand's gaze flicked over Jon's black cloak, the direwolf clasp at his throat, the sword at his hip. He wants to understand why ravens have been arriving in King's Landing. Speaking of dead men who walk, Marbrand replied. He wants to know if it is a ploy, a northern lie, a wildling trick, or something real.
Será Liceres Nortez.
Tell him we've no time for southern games. Jon's gaze cut to him.
Será Licer, a warn softly.
Marbrand's mouth tightened. Lord Tywin does not play games, he said. He counts costs. He wants proof. Sam stepped forward, voice trembling but stubborn. We have proof, Sam said. We've seen. Jon held up a hand. I will show you what I can, he said to Marbrand. But you will not take men beyond the wall without my word. The north is not a road you can march down because your lord commands it. Marbrand's eyes cooled. My lord commands many roads, he said. And the wall commands this one, Jon replied. For a moment, the room felt like a knife edge. Then Marbrand inclined his head a fraction. As you say, Lord Commander.
Lat.
In the yard, Jon watched as the Lannister men set up their camp with practiced efficiency. He watched them keep their hands near their swords even while they spoke. Men who lived in the south feared different things, but fear made everyone cautious. Sam joined him, cheeks red from cold. Do you think Tywin Lannister will help? Sam asked. Jon looked up at the wall, at the pale expanse that had held for thousands of years. I think he will help if he believes it's in his interest, Jon said. And I think he will believe it if he sees it.
Sam swallowed.
Then we have to show him. Jon's jaw tightened. Beyond the wall, the dead were gathering like a tide. He had seen the blue eyes in the dark, the way the cold felt like a living thing pressing against the skin. He could still hear the sound of the dead at Hardhome, the way they had screamed without breath. He could still see the Night King, if that was what the legends called him, standing among his army as if winter itself wore a man's face. Bring the dragonglass, Jon said. They went beyond the wall at dusk, when the sky was the color of old bruises and the cold had teeth. Jon Snow led the ranging not because he wanted to prove anything to a lord he had never met, but because men needed to see with their own eyes what words could not carry. Proof was not a letter. Proof was frost on eyelashes and the sound of something dead moving through snow. Tormund Giantsbane came with them, because the free folk understood the dead in a way the South never could. He strode through the drifts as if winter had been made for his feet. Crimson cloaks, he grunted to Jon, eyeing the Lannister men with amusement. Pretty color, easy to spot when they freeze. Ser Davin Marbrand did not laugh. His men moved in a tight knot, torches held high, swords drawn. Their discipline was a comfort and an irritation. They walked like men who had fought human wars. They did not yet understand the enemy that did not tire, did not break, did not negotiate. The forest beyond the wall was a cathedral of black trunks and whispering wind. Snow fell in fine needles, stinging skin. The silence was never complete. The trees creaked like old bones, and the distant howl of a wolf sometimes cut through the dark like a warning. Jon felt the change first. He did not know how to name it, only that the air grew heavier, as if something unseen pressed down. His breath steamed, then seemed to vanish faster, stolen by cold that was not natural. Tormund's eyes narrowed. They're close, he muttered. Marbrand swallowed. How can you tell? Tormund bared his teeth. Because the world feels like it wants you dead. Then the whites came. They did not charge like men. They lurched, stumbling through drifts, arms outstretched, fingers clawing. Their eyes burned blue in the torchlight. Some wore the remnants of wildling furs. Others wore the black of the watch. A few had no flesh left on parts of their faces, skull showing through rime. Their mouths gaped as they rushed forward, and the sound that came out was not a scream so much as the wind forcing its way through a hollow thing. Fire! Jon shouted. Torches swung down. Flames kissed dead skin and took it greedily. whites flailed, burning, and still reached for living throats. A Lannister soldier cried out as a corpse's nails tore into his cheek. Another man drove a sword through a white's belly as if it mattered, then stared in horror as the thing kept coming. Head! Jon barked. Or fire! Longclaw flashed, Valyrian steel catching torchlight as if it drank it. Jon took a white's head clean off. The corpse fell, blue eyes still staring, body twitching like a severed insect. Tormund's axe bit into another, splitting skull. The sound was wrong, wet and brittle. Marbrand fought like a man trying to force sense onto madness. He hacked at arms, shoulders, necks. His men began to understand, too late, that ordinary steel was only delaying the inevitable. A white grabbed a crimson cloak and dragged the man down to snow, teeth snapping. The man's scream cut off as another torch plunged into the heap. Jon's lungs burned. The cold bit deeper, relentless. He saw movement beyond the whites. Taller shapes, still as trees, pale against darkness. White walkers, the others. They stood at the edge of torchlight where flame did not reach. One raised a hand slightly, almost lazily, and the whites surged harder, as if pulled by invisible strings. Marbrand saw them. Jon knew because the knight's face went blank with shock, as though his mind had tried to refuse what his eyes delivered. That, Jon said, voice tight, is why we asked for help. Marbrand's lips parted. No words came. A white lunged at him, and instinct saved him where disbelief could not. Marbrand raised his sword, but Jon was there first, driving dragonglass into the corpse's throat. The white convulsed, then collapsed, blue light snuffing like a candle. Marbrand stared at the black stone shard protruding from dead flesh. "What is that?" he breathed. "Dragonglass," Sam had called it. Frozen fire, the children's weapon. The only thing common men could carry that made monsters die. Jon's gaze flicked again to the pale figures at the treeline. They had not moved closer. They watched, waiting, as if the skirmish was not a battle but a lesson. "We need one," Jon said suddenly. Tormund looked at him as if he were mad. "One what?" "One white," Jon replied, and forced the words out through cold lips. "Alive, for proof." Marbrand blinked. "Alive!" Jon did not answer. He moved, shouting orders. Men formed a tight circle, torches raised. They drove the whites back into a narrow space between two boulders half buried in snow. Longclaw took heads. Torches took bodies. Dragonglass struck where it could, each blow a mercy. At last, one white remained, pinned by spears like a boar at a hunt. Thrashed, snapping, blue eyes wild. Tormund slammed the flat of his axe into its knees, knocking it down. "Hack its hands," Jon ordered, "and its feet. Keep it from tearing you apart." Men hesitated. Then they did it, sickened. Steel bit dead bone. The white screamed soundlessly, jaw working. They wrapped chains around its torso and neck, around the stumps of limbs. They gagged it because its teeth were weapons. When it was done, the thing lay bound in snow, thrashing like a fish on ice, blue eyes burning at the living men who had reduced it to a prisoner. Marbrand stood over it, breathing hard, crimson cloak spattered with ash. His face looked older. "Lord Tywin will believe this," he said hoarsely. Jon looked back toward the trees. The pale figures were gone. The cold remained. "Then we had best get it south," Jon said, "before the rest of them follow." The journey south was a parade of disbelief turning slowly into terror. They kept the white in a cage of iron bands bolted to a wagon bed, the kind of thing used to transport dangerous beasts for a lord's menagerie. The creature strained against chains whenever night fell. Sometimes it threw itself at the bars with such fury the wagon shuddered and horses screamed. The men learned to keep torches close. Fire calmed it the way a whip calmed a dog. Never permanently, only enough to keep it from tearing itself to pieces trying to reach living flesh. Word traveled faster than wheels. By the time they reached the first villages south of the neck, peasants were already gathering at a distance, clutching children, making signs against evil. Some threw salt, some threw stones. A septon in one village tried to step forward, shaking a 7-pointed star and whispering prayers until the white lunged at the bars and snapped its teeth, so close the old man fell backward in the mud. Ser Davin Marbrand did not let the procession stop for long. He drove his men hard, because the farther south they went, the more eyes followed, and eyes brought questions, and questions brought trouble. At night, the Lannister men camped in tight rings, wagons forming a barrier, torches planted like stakes. They slept in shifts, armor on, swords within reach. Some did not sleep at all. Men who lived in the south feared different things, but fear made everyone cautious. They crossed rivers that ran dark and swollen. They passed fields where stubble showed through frost like broken teeth. The Riverlands still bore scars from war. Burnt beams, collapsed cottages, orchards hacked down. Men stared from doorways with hollow eyes. They had seen enough death that another kind of corpse should not have surprised them. And yet it did. They flinched from the cage as if the air around it carried disease. One night, near an abandoned holdfast, a young soldier named Lyle began to laugh. It started as a soft sound, almost hysterical, and then grew until his shoulders shook. Marbrand watched him from across the fire, expression tight. "What's funny?" Marbrand asked. Lyle's laughter strangled into a cough. "My lord," he said, eyes bright. "I was thinking, Lord Tywin Lannister will be pleased. He will see this thing and know we told no lie. He will..." Lyle's voice wavered. "He will know we didn't die for nothing." Marbrand's gaze slid to the cage. The white lay still for once, head tilted, blue eyes open. It watched. It always watched as if it were learning. "None of this is about pleasing him," Marbrand said quietly. "It is about keeping the realm from ending." The young soldier swallowed. Do you think they can all become like that?" he asked, voice small. He gestured toward the cage. Marbrand did not answer at first. He remembered the pale figures in the trees. He remembered the way the cold had felt like intent. "Yes," he said finally. "I think anyone can." The soldier's face went gray. By the time they reached the Crownlands, sleet had turned to sharp, stinging rain. King's Landing's stink reached them before its walls did. The familiar reek of sewage and smoke and bodies pressed too close. The city rose from the shore like a bruise-colored mound. The Red Keep perched above it all, arrogant and blind. Marbrand rode ahead to announce their arrival. The gates opened with more reluctance than welcome. The gold cloaks on duty stared at the cage and made the sign of the seven without thinking, as if piety could substitute for steel. Inside the city, people screamed. Some ran. Some laughed, thinking it a grotesque mummer's show. The White chose that moment to hurl itself at the bars, chains clanking, teeth snapping. The laughter died. Marbrand tightened his grip on the reins. He did not look at the faces. He kept his eyes on the Red Keep, on the high walls where Tywin Lannister waited. He wondered, in a sudden uneasy flash, whether the lion would believe, and if believing would be enough. Tywin Lannister did not go to the White. He made the White come to him. They brought the cage into the inner courtyard of the Red Keep at dusk, when the air was cool enough to keep the stench from thickening. Torches were set in iron brackets. Guards formed a ring, halberds angled inward, faces drawn tight. Tywin stood at the center of the half-moon of men, as if he were inspecting a new siege engine. Ser Davin Marbrand knelt when he approached. Mud stained his boots, ash stained his cloak. He looked like a man who had walked through a different world and returned carrying its shadow. "My lord," Marbrand said. "As ordered." Tywin's gaze went to the cage. The White lay still for a moment, head cocked as if listening. Then it surged forward, chains clanking, jaws snapping at the bars with a sound like rocks grinding. The horses that had halted and reared and screamed until stable boys dragged them away. Pycelle made a strangled noise. "Seven, save us," he whispered. Tywin ignored him. "Unbolt it," he said. Marbrand hesitated. "My lord." Tywin's eyes flicked to him. "If it cannot be controlled, it is useless," Tywin said. "If it can, I will know it." Marbrand swallowed and signaled his men. They approached the cage with long poles tipped with hooks, keeping distance. The white flung itself against the bars, teeth snapping at empty air. The strength was unnatural. Tywin noted it without reaction, as if noting the pull of a rope. QYBURN stepped forward, holding a small vial of green liquid that caught torchlight like poison. "A precaution," QYBURN murmured, voice eager in a way that made Tywin's skin crawl. "A small measure of wildfire, diluted, enough to ignite if necessary." Tywin's mouth tightened. "If necessary," he repeated. The bolts came loose with grating squeals. The cage door swung outward. For one heartbeat, the white did not move, as if confused by the sudden freedom. Then it exploded forward, a blur of dead flesh and chain. It slammed into the nearest guard, teeth snapping for his throat. The man screamed and stumbled backward. Halberds jabbed. The white took a blade through its ribs as if it were nothing. Clawed, nails scraping metal, reaching for warm skin. "Hold!" Tywin snapped. Men obeyed on reflex, even as fear turned their faces white. They did not want to get close. They did not want to die. But Tywin's voice was a command that could make men step into fire. The guard the white had struck fell, clutching his arm where dead teeth had torn through leather and flesh. Blood ran down his sleeve. The white turned toward Tywin, blue eyes burning. It lunged. For an instant, time narrowed. Tywin did not flinch. He had stood before charging horses and angry mobs and kings threatening to cut his head off. He had never stood before something that should not exist. The white hit the invisible wall of men between it and Tywin. Two halberds crossed, catching it in the chest and driving it back. It snarled soundlessly and fuffed against the blades like an animal in a trap. The strength was astonishing. One guard's boots slid on stone. "Fire," Tywin said, quiet. A torch plunged forward. Flame caught on dead hair, then on dry cloth. The white convulsed, arms flailing. The blue in its eyes did not dim immediately. It burned like a thing that hated the world for being alive. The smell was foul, like rotting meat and wet wool. Pycelle gagged. A few guards looked away, retching into the stones. Tywin watched until the white collapsed, blackened, still twitching. The blue light in its eyes finally flickered and went out. Silence fell, heavy and stunned. From the balcony above, Cersei's voice cut down like a knife. "A trick," she called. "A dead thing in chains. You would have us believe children's tales." Tommen's small face peeked from behind a column, eyes wide and wet. He looked like he might vomit. Tywin did not look up at Cersei. He looked at the dead creature's remains. He looked at the guard bleeding on the stones. "This is no trick," Tywin said. Cersei's laughter was sharp, brittle. "So now you believe in monsters?" she mocked. Tywin lifted his gaze then, and when he looked at her, she fell silent. Not because she was afraid of the dead, but because she recognized the expression on his face. The look he wore when deciding which city to sack and which to spare. "I believe in threats," Tywin said, "and I believe in preparing for them." He turned to Marbrand. "How many?" he asked. Marbrand's face was grim. "Thousands, my lord. More. And the ones in the trees. They command them." Tywin nodded once, as if receiving confirmation of a suspicion rather than news that could end the world. He looked at Kevin. "Send word to the Alchemists' Guild," Tywin said. "I want an accounting of every jar of wildfire in the city by tomorrow." He looked at Pycelle. "Send ravens to every great house." "Not please. Orders. Grain, men, smiths. Winter has come with teeth." Pycelle's lips trembled. "My lord, the lords will not." Tywin's voice hardened. "They will," he said, "or they will die, and someone else will inherit their lands." He looked once more at the blackened corpse on the stones, at the blue light that had been in its eyes. For the first time in years, Tywin Lannister considered a war where gold cannot buy victory. And he felt, not fear but anger, pure and bright, that the world had dared to present him with something that did not obey his rules. The Alchemist's Guild had always been a useful horror. Tywin remembered it from Aerys' reign. Robed men with soot on their fingers and madness in their devotion, carrying jars of green death as if cradling holy relics. Aerys had loved them. He had loved anything that promised power without restraint. Tywin had never loved them. He had used them. The Guildhall lay beneath King's Landing like a festering secret. Narrow stairs spiraled down into damp stone. The air grew warmer, thick with chemical fumes and candle smoke. Green light pulsed faintly ahead, making the shadows crawl. CAILIN the pyromancer bowed low when Tywin entered, his chain of office catching the eerie glow. His eyes were bright, too bright. "Lord Hand," CAILIN said reverently, an honor beyond measure." Tywin did not return the pleasantry. He walked along the racks of jars as if inspecting wine. The wildfire within each vessel moved like living flame, restless, hungry. It cast green reflections on Tywin's hands and made his rings look like drowned things pulled from a river. "How much?" Tywin asked. CAILIN's throat bobbed. "We have stores, my lord. Hidden caches. Reserves in the Guildhall. In vaults known only to us. The city has always required." "Numbers," Tywin said. CAILIN's fingers turned the coin idly. "We can produce more," he offered quickly. "With time. With gold. With—" Tywin turned his head slightly, and the pyromancer's words died like a candle in wind. "You will give me numbers," Tywin said. "You will give me locations. You will give me methods of transport that do not end with half the city burning." His eyes narrowed. "And you will do it today." CAILIN swallowed. "My lord, the secrets of the guild are—" "Not secrets," Tywin corrected. "Assets." He gestured with 2 fingers. Red cloaks stepped forward, faces impassive. "If you refuse, I will have every one of your doors sealed and your members dragged into the street. The realm will not mourn you." CAILIN paled. "We, of course," he stammered. "Of course, Lord Hand. The guild exists to serve the crown." Kevin walked beside Tywin, silent as ever. In the green light, his face looked carved from stone. "This is dangerous," Kevin murmured when CAILIN hurried ahead to fetch ledgers. "Wildfire. It is not a weapon you can always put down." Tywin's voice was low. "Neither are the dead," he replied. QYBURN drifted like a shadow at Tywin's other side, hands clasped behind his back. He gazed at the jars with something like affection. "Such potential," QYBURN whispered, "if applied with precision." Tywin's eyes flicked to him. "Precision is the only thing that separates weapon from catastrophe," Tywin said. "Remember that." QYBURN's smile deepened faintly. "Always, my lord." They moved deeper into the hall, passing tables covered with tools. Tongs, knives, glass tubes. Men in hoods stirred mixtures, muttering to themselves. Tywin could not tell whether they prayed or calculated. Perhaps the guild did not know the difference. When CAILIN returned with ledgers, Tywin did not take them with his own hands. He motioned to Kevin. "Copy these," Tywin ordered. "Every cache, every jar, every measure. I want men stationed at each location. Red cloaks, not pyromancers." CAILIN's voice rose, panicked. "My lord, you cannot, those caches are sacred. If untrained hands touch them, they die," Tywin said. "That is why my trained hands will control who approaches." He leaned slightly toward CAILIN, his voice almost gentle. "The king's city will not be burned by accident. If it burns, it will be because I chose it." CAILIN stared at him, and for the first time his devotion faltered into something more honest. "Fear." Tywin straightened. "You will also begin production of fire pots," he said. "Smaller, contained. Something a man can carry and throw without dying himself." He paused, considering. "And I want you to consult with the smiths on iron casings. If these jars must travel north, they will not shatter from a jolt in the road." "And north?" CAILIN echoed, as if the word itself was cold. Tywin turned back toward the stairs, leaving green light behind him. Winter will not stop at the wall, he said. We will bring fire to meet it. As they climbed, the air grew cleaner, but Tywin carried the scent of wildfire with him, sharp and bitter. Outside, the city's bells rang for evening prayer. People knelt in septs and whispered to gods about mercy and salvation. Tywin Lannister did not kneel. He counted jars. He counted men. He counted days. And somewhere beyond the wall, the dead counted too. Olenna Tyrell requested a private word as if she were inviting Tywin to tea. Tywin accepted as if he were agreeing to an execution. They met in the GODSWOOD, a small patch of stubborn green tucked within stone and politics. King's Landing's GODSWOOD was no Winterfell grove. It had no heart tree, no solemn red leaves like blood on snow. Still, it was quieter than the court, and quiet made lies easier to hear. Olenna sat on a stone bench, cane across her knees. Marjorie stood behind her like a painted shield, face serene, eyes alert. A raven perched on a branch overhead, head cocked, listening as if it understood. "My lord," Olenna said, voice mild, "I hear you have acquired a curiosity." Tywin did not waste time. "I have acquired proof," he said, "and the realm will require cooperation." Olenna's mouth twitched. "Cooperation," she repeated. "Another pretty word. Like unity, like peace." Marjorie's gaze flicked to Tywin, measured. "If this threat is real," she said carefully, "the Reach will not stand aside." Tywin's eyes stayed on Olenna. "The Reach will send grain," he said, "and men. Not because you are kind, Lady Olenna, but because you are not a fool. Winter will choke trade. It will empty markets. If the dead come, there will be no harvest at all." Olenna's eyes sharpened. "You speak of dead as if they are bandits," she said, "as if you can bribe them, as if you can frighten them with your reputation." "I speak of them as an enemy," Tywin replied, "and enemies can be met with force." Olenna leaned back slightly, studying him. "How charming," she said. "Tywin Lannister, savior of the realm. I would almost believe it if I hadn't lived long enough to see what you call saving." Tywin's voice remained even. "Believe whatever you like," he said, "but send what I require." Marjorie stepped forward a fraction. "And what will you give in return?" she asked softly. Tywin looked at her then, at the poised young woman who had survived Joffrey's cruelty with smiles and silk, who wore charm like armor. "Stability," Tywin said. "A living kingdom for you to inherit." Olenna snorted. "And who will inherit it, I wonder?" she mused. "Your grandson? Your daughter? Or perhaps you will decide the Reach needs a Lannister sitting in every chair." Tywin's gaze did not flicker. "I do not intend to die," he said. Olenna's laughter was quiet. "No," she agreed. "Men like you rarely intend such things. Yet the world has a habit of ignoring intentions." The raven above them croaked once, harsh. Tywin's eyes lifted briefly to it, then back to Olenna. "You are afraid," he said. It was not an accusation. It was an observation. Olenna's smile faded. For a moment, the sharp old woman looked tired, the weight of years pressing down. Then the mask returned. "I am old enough to be afraid of many things," she said. "But I am also old enough to recognize when the ground beneath us shifts." She tapped her cane against stone. "If this winter is what you say, then every petty quarrel will look ridiculous when the dead are at the gates." Marjorie's voice softened. "We will help," she said, "but you must not use this to tighten your grasp until we all choke." Tywin's eyes held hers. "I will use whatever I must," he said. "The realm cannot afford softness." Olenna's gaze hardened. "Softness," she echoed. "That is what you call mercy, and yet you expect the Reach to bleed for you." Tywin stepped closer, the distance between them narrowing. "I expect the Reach to bleed for itself," he said, "because if we do not, there will be nothing left to protect. Not your roses, not my lions, not your granddaughter's crown." Olenna stared at him for a long moment. Then she sighed, as if letting go of a battle she had fought for too many years. "Very well," she said. "You will have your grain and your men, and in return, I will pray that the gods grant us deliverance from both winter and lions." Tywin did not smile. "Pray," he said, "and send wagons." As he turned to leave, Marjorie's voice stopped him. "Lord Tywin," she said, "if the dead truly come, will you go north yourself?" Tywin paused. He did not look back. "If the realm requires it," he said. Olenna's laugh followed him like a bitter perfume. "The realm always requires something," she called, "especially from those who believe they own it." Tywin walked on, the scent of roses fading behind him. In his mind, the map of Westeros unfolded again, white spreading like frost across parchment. The godswood was green, but beyond the walls the sky was turning the color of snow. The next raven arrived before sunrise, as if even the birds feared to travel in full daylight. Tywin Lannister was already awake. Sleep had become a shallow thing in recent days, a brief sinking into darkness before thoughts hauled him back up. The Red Keep was quiet at dawn. Even the city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the day's troubles to begin. He stood in the map room with a cup of wine he did not drink. Candles burned low, their stubs leaning. The table was covered in parchment and pins, the realm laid out like a patient beneath a surgeon's hands. The raven's message was short. It came from Castle Black, sealed with black wax and the imprint of the Night's Watch. The writing was cramped, hurried. "Hardhome is lost. The dead rise in numbers beyond counting. They come with the cold. We need fire. We need Dragong." The last word trailed into a smear, ink scratched as if the writer's hand had shaken or been dragged away. Tywin read it twice, then set it down with care, as if placing a blade back into its sheath. Kevan entered quietly, closing the door behind him. "More bad news," Kevan said, not asking. Tywin did not look up. "The north bleeds," he said, "and it will not stop bleeding." Kevan's gaze moved over the table. "You have marked Winterfell," Kevan noted. Tywin's finger rested on the pin there, pressing it into the parchment hard enough to dent the wood beneath. "Winterfell is the key," Tywin said. "If the dead come through the wall, they must pass it. The North's roads lead there. Armies can gather there. Supplies can be stored there. If we fight where we can hold." Kevan frowned. "The Boltons hold Winterfell," he said. Tywin's mouth tightened. "For now," he replied. Kevan hesitated, then asked the question Tywin knew sat in every loyal man's mind. "Do you truly believe this threat is as great as the Watch claims?" Tywin's gaze lifted, and for a moment Kevan saw something rare. Not doubt, but the hard acceptance of a man confronting an enemy that did not care about titles. "I have seen the proof," Tywin said, "and I have learned in my years that men lie for advantage. But fear has a particular taste." He gestured toward the raven letter. "That is not the taste of a man inventing stories. That is the taste of desperation." Kevan's shoulders rose and fell with a slow breath. "Then what do you intend?" Tywin picked up a pin and turned it between his fingers, thinking. "We will strip the realm for what it can give," he said. "We will send men north. We will send grain. We will send wildfire, controlled and guarded. We will send smiths to work dragonglass into weapons." His eyes narrowed. "We will not wait for winter to come to us. We will meet it where it first bares its teeth." Kevan's expression grew grim. "And the capital?" he asked. "If you send too much away." "The capital will be held," Tywin said. "It will not fall to riots because the people are hungry." He tapped the Rose Road. "The Reach will fee. Dias. The Riverlands will be forced into order. The Iron Bank will be paid enough to keep its knives sheathed." His gaze slid to the narrow sea, to Dragonstone drawn like a claw off the coast. "And we will watch the east." Kevan's brow furrowed. "The east." Tywin's voice was quiet. "Dragons," he said. "Daenerys Targaryen. The girl across the sea with an army of slaves and a claim." The name tasted old, like wine left too long in a cask. "If she comes, she will come to a realm already shaking. And if she learns the dead are real..." Tywin's mouth tightened. She may see opportunity. Kevin said nothing. The thought hung in the air. A war on two fronts, one against men, one against something colder than men. Tywin set the pin down. "Send for Maester Pycelle," he ordered. "I want every record the Citadel keeps on the long night. I want every tale stripped of nonsense until only useful detail remains." He paused. "And send riders to every port. I want reports of any ships from Essos, any sellswords, any whispers of dragons." Kevin inclined his head and moved to leave, but Tywin's voice stopped him. "Kevin," Tywin said. Kevin turned back. Tywin's gaze went to the window, where pale morning light seeped through shutters. On the ledge, a thin dusting of snow had gathered, white against stone, delicate and silent. Tywin spoke softly, as if to himself. "Winter does not announce itself," he said. "It simply arrives, and those who believed they had time find themselves buried." Kevin's face tightened. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Tywin's eyes returned to the map, to Winterfell, to the wall. "I need you to hold the capital when I am gone," Tywin said. Kevin's eyes widened slightly. "You will go north yourself," he said. Tywin did not phrase it as a question. He did not allow the world that. "The realm will not follow whispers and ravens," Tywin said. "It will follow a man it fears, a man it obeys, a man whose name carries weight. If I must place my weight on the north to keep it from cracking, I will." Kevin's mouth opened, then closed. He knew better than to argue with Tywin when Tywin had already decided. Tywin picked up a pin and drove it into the map at Winterfell with a firm, final motion. The sound was small, a soft thud in a quiet room, and yet it felt like the beginning of a war. Outside, the city woke. Somewhere a bell rang. Somewhere a child cried. Life continued, blind to the cold gathering at the edge of the world. Tywin Lannister stood over the map and listened to the morning as if listening for footsteps in a hall. He could not yet hear the dead, but he knew they were coming. The realm always found new ways to bleed, but this one was stranger. Not banners in the field, not daggers in dark corridors, but cold itself pushing south like an invading army. Tywin Lannister held the Raven's letter between two fingers, as if it were something that might stain him. The seal had been broken already by Pycelle's trembling hands, but Tywin had insisted on reading it aloud himself, because the sound of the words mattered. People believed what they heard in a powerful man's voice more readily than what they read. "Stannis Baratheon has landed at Eastwatch by the sea." Tywin read, each word clipped, "and marched to Castle Black. He fell upon the wildlings and broke their host. The wall stands." He paused and let the room absorb that much at least. Victory, however inconvenient, was still a fact that could be shaped. Mance Rayder is taken. The Night's Watch claims the dead continue to rise beyond the wall. Cersei's mouth curled. "Of course they do," she said. "Now the crows have a new story to beg with." Marjorie's expression did not change, but her eyes sharpened slightly. Olenna snorted like an old hound smelling rot. Tommen's small hand tightened on the edge of the table. "Stannis is... he is a traitor," he said, voice thin. He sounded as if he were reciting something taught rather than something understood. "He is," Tywin agreed without softness. "And he is also at the wall." Kevin's brow furrowed. "If he holds the northern gate, he holds leverage," Kevin said quietly. "He holds cold stone and starving men," Cersei snapped. "Let him freeze. One less enemy." Tywin's gaze slid to her. "You think in terms of enemies," he said. "I think in terms of threats." Cersei's eyes flashed. "And you believe Stannis is a threat greater than the corpse you burned in the courtyard?" Tywin set the Raven letter down atop the map, over the white expanse that marked the lands beyond the wall. "I believe Stannis Baratheon will use any chaos to press his claim," he said. "And I believe the dead will use any division to end us." He looked at Pycelle. "What do the Citadel's records say of the long night?" Pycelle licked his lips. "My lord, the accounts are confused. Legends, old wives' tales. Legends leave bones behind," Olenna said dryly. Tywin did not acknowledge her quip with more than a flicker of his eyes. The legends say fire stopped the darkness, he said. Then fire we will have. Marjorie drew in a slow breath. If Stannis is at the wall, she said, and the Night's Watch is begging for aid, then the North will look to him, not to the Iron Throne. Cersei's smile was brittle. Let them, she said. The North has always been ungrateful. Tywin's voice remained level. If the North falls, the Reach's fields will freeze next, he said. Then the Riverlands. Then the Crownlands. King's Landing will not be spared because it calls itself civilized. He turned his head slightly toward Tommen. You understand that, Your Grace? Tommen swallowed hard and nodded, though his eyes darted toward his mother as if seeking permission to agree. Tywin's hand flattened on the map, fingers splayed like claws over the King's Road. We will send aid to the wall, he said. Food, fuel, men who can hold a spear, and we will send a letter to Stannis Baratheon. Cersei's chair scraped as she sat straighter. A letter? She repeated, incredulous. To that usurper? To that commander? Tywin corrected. I will not call him king, but I will not pretend he is irrelevant. He looked at Kevin. Choose an envoy who is not a fool and not a zealot. Someone who can speak to Stannis without kneeling. Kevin's gaze shifted toward the door as if already weighing names. Ser Davin Marbrand has seen the proof, Kevin suggested. He brought the thing. If anyone can speak of it plainly, it is him. Tywin nodded once. Ser Davin, he said. He will go. He will carry my terms and the king's seal. Cersei laughed under her breath. Terms, she echoed, and there was poison in the word. What terms do you imagine Stannis will accept? Tywin looked at her, and the room cooled. The terms of survival, he said. He will keep the wall from crumbling. He will share whatever knowledge he has gained. In return, the crown will send supplies. If he chooses to spit on that, then he will have chosen pride over life, and the realm will remember. Olenna lifted her chin. The realm has a poor memory, she said. It remembers the last man standing. That is why I intend to stand, Tywin replied. He turned then to Marjorie. Highgarden's wagons will be ready, he said. Not a question. A statement that made its own demand. Marjorie's smile was polite. The Reach does not wish to see winter swallow the world, she said. Olenna's cane tapped stone once. We will send food, she said, but we will not send our sons north to die for Lannister pride. Tywin's gaze held hers. Then send men who are not your sons, he said. A thin silence followed, tight as a drawn wire. Tommen looked between them, eyes wide, as if watching larger beasts circle each other. Cersei broke it. And what of the capital? She demanded. If you send men away, you leave Tommen vulnerable. Tywin's eyes narrowed a fraction. The capital will be held, he said, by discipline, by food, by fear if necessary. He glanced toward Kevin. Kevin will remain here. He will see the city fed and the streets watched. Cersei's nostrils flared. She understood instantly that Tywin was building a wall around the throne, one she could not climb. You will go, she said, as if tasting it. You will ride north. Tywin did not deny it. When the first wagons roll, he said. When the last order is given. Not before. He looked toward Tommen again, and for a heartbeat his expression softened into something like instruction rather than command. A king does not hide behind his walls and hope the storm passes, he said. He prepares. He acts. He endures. Tommen's voice wavered. Will the dead come here? He asked. Cersei reached for him reflexively, but Tywin's answer came first. Not if we stop them, Tywin said. He rose. The council rose with him as if pulled by strings. Even Olenna's cane scraped as she pushed herself upright, eyes never leaving his face. Tywin gathered the raven letters into a neat stack, as if tidying could impose order on chaos. Pycelle, he said. Send ravens to every lord of consequence. Not stories. Not fears. Instructions. He looked at Kevin. Begin the accounting of men. The Westerlands first, then the Crownlands, then whatever can be squeezed from the Riverlands. He turned toward Cersei, and his voice lowered, carrying only to her. You will not undermine this, he said. If you do, I will treat you as I would any threat. Her eyes hardened. I am your daughter, she whispered. And I am the hand, Tywin replied. He walked from the chamber with the certainty of a man leaving a room he owned. Behind him, the council lingered in a hush, as if the walls themselves waited to see whether the lion's commands would hold against winter. Tycho Nestoris did not smile the way Westerosi lords smiled, with teeth and warmth meant to disguise hunger. His smile was polite, thin, like the edge of a coin. He sat with perfect posture in the Red Keep Solar, as if he were in his own counting house in Bravos rather than in a foreign castle built on murder. The Iron Bank has heard many rumors, Tycho said, voice smooth. Rumors of instability, rumors of regicides, rumors of a dwarf who escaped justice. Tywin's face did not change. Rumors are the refuge of men who cannot count, he said. Tycho's fingers turned the coin idly. And yet men who count often pay us, he replied. Tywin placed the charred bone on the table between them, beside an iron chain link blackened by fire. Tycho's eyes dipped to it, and for the first time his composure shifted. Not much, but enough that Tywin saw it. Interest and something close to caution. This is what I count now, Tywin said. Not gossip. Tycho's gaze lifted again. A burnt bone does not frighten me, Lord Hand. It should, Tywin said quietly, if it belonged to something that did not remain dead. Tycho's coin paused. Kevin remained silent behind Tywin, but his presence filled the room like a shield. Red cloaks at the door stood rigid, faces blank. They had been chosen because they did not flinch at talk of corpses. Tycho leaned forward slightly, not touching the bone but examining it as if it were an investment. You are telling me there is an enemy in your north, he said. An enemy that does not negotiate, that does not tire, that cannot be bribed. Yes, Tywin said, and I am telling you that if Westeros falls, the Iron Bank's ledgers become ash. Tycho's eyes were very dark. The Iron Bank has survived empires, he said. Tywin's gaze was flat. The Iron Bank survives because someone is alive to owe it money, he said. A dead continent pays nothing. For a moment, the rain against the window sounded louder, as if the world leaned in to listen. Tycho set the coin down gently. You wish to borrow, he said, to fund this preparation. I wish to ensure the Crown's obligations to Bravos remain profitable, Tywin corrected. The realm will require ships, wagons, food, iron. I can squeeze lords for men, but gold moves faster than banners. Tycho's mouth curved again. And what guarantee does the Iron Bank receive? He asked. That these loans will not vanish into the same chaos that swallowed your previous payments? Tywin's fingers tapped once against the table. You have always relied on one guarantee, he said, that I pay my debts. Tycho studied him. You are a formidable man, Tycho admitted, but you are also mortal. Tywin's eyes narrowed. So is the world, he replied. Tycho inhaled slowly, then reached into his pouch and drew out a small ledger bound in dark leather. The Iron Bank does not lend on fear, he said. We lend on certainty. Tywin's voice remained calm. Then you will find me certain, he said. The Eye. Ron Throne will offer you tariff rights at King's Landing's docks for 10 years. The Crown will grant Bravosi ships priority berthing during winter months. And the gold mines of the Westerlands will guarantee repayment. Kevin shifted slightly, and Tycho's gaze flicked toward him, then back. The gold mines, Tycho repeated. A bold pledge. Tywin's expression did not waver. A necessary pledge, he said. There will be no mine if the dead walk the tunnels beneath Casterly Rock. Tycho's eyes narrowed, as if imagining it. Perhaps he could. Bankers were good at imagining disasters. It was how they survived. And if, Tycho said softly, "This threat is exaggerated? If the Night's Watch simply wishes to drag the realm north into a war of snow and wildlings." Tywin's hand slid toward the bone, and he pushed it an inch closer. "Touch it," he said. Tycho hesitated, then reached out with 2 fingers and lifted the charred fragment. It was light, brittle. The smell of burned flesh clung faintly to it. Tycho held it up to the candle, examining the porous structure, the way it had cracked. "Human," Tycho said. "Not anymore," Tywin replied. Tycho set it down again with care, as if it were contaminated. "You are a man who does not waste threats," he murmured. Tywin's gaze was steady. "No," he said. "I waste nothing." Silence stretched. The candles guttered slightly as a draft found its way through stone. Tycho closed his ledger. "The Iron Bank will consider your terms," he said at last. "But there is another certainty we require." Tywin waited. Tycho's voice lowered. "If this war consumes the realm," he said, "and the Iron Throne collapses, we will back the power that remains. We always do." Tywin's eyes hardened. "You are warning me," he said. Tycho's smile returned, thin and courteous. "I am reminding you how banks survive," he said. Tywin leaned forward, voice quiet but iron. "Then remember this," he said. "If you wish to profit from Westeros after winter, you will help me keep it alive through winter." Tycho held his gaze for a long moment. Then he inclined his head a fraction. "We will send word to Braavos," he said. "And in the meantime, we will release a modest sum." "A modest sum," Tywin echoed as if tasting it. Tycho's smile did not change. "Modest," he agreed, "until certainty becomes undeniable." Tywin rose, signaling the meeting's end. "Certainty will come," he said, "whether the world wishes it or not." As Tycho stood and gathered his pouch, his eyes lingered on the bone one last time. The banker's composure was intact, but Tywin saw what lay beneath it, the awareness that some debts could not be collected from the dead. The Riverlands had always been a land of soft hills and slow rivers, but war turned softness into mud and rivers into graves. Jaime Lannister stood beneath a sagging canvas awning and watched men hammer iron into shapes that might kill other men. The clang of the smith's work carried through camp like a heartbeat. Smoke rose from cook fires and mingled with fog. Fry banners snapped wetly in the wind, bright and ugly against the gray world. Riverrun's walls loomed in the distance, strong and stubborn. Within them the blackfish held out, refusing to bend. Outside them, the Freys preened as if sieges were feasts. Edmure Tully sat in chains near a tent post, watched by Fry men who enjoyed the sight of his humiliation far more than they enjoyed victory. Jaime's golden hand rested on the edge of the war table, fingers tapping with a faint metallic click. He hated the sound. It reminded him constantly of what he had lost and what he had become. A raven landed on the post beside him, feathers slick with damp. The bird shook itself and looked at him with a bead-bright eye as if judging whether he was worth the trouble. A rider hurried in behind it, breathing hard. "Ser Jaime," he said, "from King's Landing." Jaime's stomach tightened before the boy even held out the letter. He took it with his left hand, broke the seal and read. The handwriting was Kevin's, precise and grim. The words were blunt. Tywin required men. Tywin required grain. Tywin required smiths who could work black stone into blades. And Tywin required Jaime to understand that war had changed. Jaime read it twice, then folded the letter carefully, as if the act could keep the meaning from spilling out. "What is it?" a voice asked. He turned to see Ser Forley Prester approaching, an older man with a hard mouth and loyal eyes. Behind him, a Fry cousin, one of Walder's endless brood, lounged with a grin, as if everything in the world were a joke told for his amusement. Jaime's gaze flicked over the Fry and returned to Forley. "My father is raising levies," Jaime said. "For the North." The Fry laughed. "The North?" he scoffed. "Let the wolves freeze. Why should we march into snow when there's warm beds here?" Jaime's jaw tightened. "Because," he said slowly, If the stories are true, the snow will march to us. The Frey's grin faltered. Stories, he said dismissively.
Crows, tales.
Jaime looked at the man as if considering how difficult it would be to kill him without causing a larger mess. A wight was brought to King's Landing, Jaime said. A dead thing that moved. Forley's expression shifted, skepticism fighting with unease. Dead men don't move, he said, though the words sounded more like a plea than a statement. Jaime's mouth twisted. Tell that to the ones who died at the fist of the first men, he said. He had heard the reports. He had dismissed them, the way men dismissed anything that did not fit into their known world. Now Tywin believed, and Tywin did not be. Leave lightly. The Frey's laugh came again, weaker. If there are dead men walking, let the Night's Watch handle it, he said. That's what they're for. Jaime's eyes hardened. The Night's Watch is a handful of starving men, he said. They cannot stop an army. Forley leaned closer, lowering his voice. Is Lord Tywin truly going north? He asked. Jaime's gaze went toward the gray horizon, toward where the King's Road stretched like a scar. Yes, he said. The word tasted strange. His father had always been the man who moved pieces from behind a table, not the man who rode into cold. And you? Forley asked. Jaime looked down at his gold hand. The fingers were cold even through the glove. He thought of Cersei's whispered command in the White Sword Tower. He thought of Tyrion's face in a cell, bruised and furious, asking him to believe. He thought of the riverlands burning, of children crying, of corpses in ditches. I will do what I am ordered, Jaime said, because that was what sons said. Forley nodded slowly, as if that answer carried comfort. The Frey shrugged, already bored. Jaime turned back to the table and looked at the map. Riverrun, the twins, Harrenhal, all these names that had meant so much in a war of men. Now, somewhere beyond the white line of the wall, there were names older than any of them. Others, White Walkers, names that had been treated like fireside tales. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he made a decision that tasted like ash. Bring Lord Edmure, Jaime said. The Frey cousin brightened. To threaten him again? He asked eagerly. To talk, Jaime said flatly. Edmure was dragged forward, chains clanking. His face was thin, his eyes haunted. He looked like a man who had been broken and then kept alive for sport. Jaime met his gaze. This siege ends, Jaime said. Today, if possible. Edmure's laugh was bitter. And if it's not possible? Jaime's voice lowered. Then I will do what I must, he said. But there are bigger things coming than Freys and Tullis. Bigger than lions and wolves. He paused. You can help end this now and keep your people alive, or you can cling to pride and watch them die twice. Edmure stared at him, confusion creasing his brow. Twice, he whispered. Jaime did not elaborate. He could barely believe the words himself. He only knew that Tywin's letter had shifted something in him. It had made the petty cruelty of this siege feel suddenly obscene. Send word to the Blackfish, Jaime said. Tell him I will speak with him under a flag of truce. Tell him Winter is coming with an army. As Edmure was dragged away to carry the message, Forley watched Jaime with a troubled expression. Do you believe it? Forley asked quietly. Truly. Jaime looked out at the gray sky, at the cold wind making banners snap like whips. He thought of his father's iron certainty. I believe my father believes it, Jaime said. And that may be worse. Cersei Lannister had never feared darkness. Darkness was useful. Darkness hid sins and sharpened secrets. But lately the dark had begun to feel crowded, as if unseen things pressed against it from beyond the walls. She stood at her table with her hands flat on parchment, fingers splayed like talons. Letters lay open, reports from the streets, from the docks, from lords who had received Tywin's ravens and responded with disbelief, outrage, or hurried compliance. Wax seals dotted the wood like little wounds. QYBURN hovered beside her like a moth drawn to flame. The city whispers, he said softly. They speak of a burned corpse in the courtyard, of a dead man biting a guard. The small folk are frightened. Cersei's laugh was low and sharp. They are always frightened, she said. If it is not famine, it is plague. If not plague, it is war. Let them tremble. Trembling people obey. Qyburn's lips curved faintly. Fear is a powerful tool, he agreed. Cersei's gaze flicked to the covered lantern on the table, faint green light leaking from beneath the cloth. My father thinks he has found a new weapon, she murmured. Fire to fight the cold. Orders to bind the realm. Her mouth twisted. And in the meantime, he binds me. Qyburn said nothing, but his silence was an invitation. Cersei leaned closer, lowering her voice. I should be the one ruling, she said. Not him, not Kevin, not the Tyrells with their smug little smiles and their roses. She swept a hand across the parchments, scattering them. This is my son's throne. Qyburn's gaze remained calm. And yet Lord Tywin holds the reins, he said gently. He always has. Cersei's fingers clenched. Not forever, she whispered. She reached for a sealed letter she had written earlier, wax still soft. It was addressed not to a lord, but to the Great September, to the High Septon, a carefully crafted plea for guidance, for the faith's support in these troubled times. Words that could become a weapon if the faith chose to step into the gap Tywin left when he rode north. Qyburn watched her hand hover over it. A wise move, he murmured. The gods have a way of reaching the hearts of men. Cersei's eyes narrowed. My father forbids it, she said. He thinks giving the faith any power is madness. Qyburn's smile deepened slightly. Lord Tywin is cautious, he said. But caution can be limiting. Cersei's fingers tightened around the letter. For a moment she imagined sending it. Imagined the High Septon's blessing. The streets filled with devout men eager to defend the city, eager to defend her son. She imagined Tywin returning from the north to find she had built her own army of righteousness. One that answered not to his gold but to her influence and the people's hunger for certainty. The door opened without knocking. Cersei's head snapped up. For a heartbeat she thought it was Jaime, coming back early, or Tommen seeking comfort. Then she saw the red cloaks, two of them, stepping aside as Tywin entered. His presence filled the room like a judgment. He did not look at Qyburn first. He looked at the scattered letters, at the covered lantern's green glow, at the sealed missive in Cersei's hand. Put it down, Tywin said. Cersei's spine stiffened. This is my chamber, she said. And that is my realm, Tywin replied, nodding toward the letter. Put it down. Cersei's fingers tightened until the wax seal cracked slightly. She set the letter on the table with deliberate care, as if not to show she had been forced. Tywin walked closer. His eyes were pale in candlelight, unreadable. Do you know what the faith will do if you give them swords? He asked. Cersei lifted her chin. They will defend us, she said, though the words sounded less certain with him in the room. They will judge you, Tywin said. They will judge your lovers, your gowns, your grief, your pride. They will judge your son's legitimacy. They will judge everything you have hidden behind my name. Cersei's face flushed with anger. You speak as if you know me, she hissed. I know power, Tywin said, and I know what happens when you place it in the hands of men who believe they answer only to gods. He leaned slightly forward. You are not clever enough to control them. The words struck like a slap. Qyburn's eyes flicked between them, bright with fascination. He said nothing. He never did unless invited. He was a creature of opportunities. Cersei's voice trembled. You humiliate me, she said. Tywin's expression did not change. I restrain you, he corrected, because you are dangerous. Cersei's laugh was bitter. Dangerous, she echoed. Yes, dangerous to your control. Tywin's gaze held hers, and something colder than anger passed through it. Disappointment, perhaps, or the hard recognition that his daughter would never be what he wanted. I am leaving for the north, he said. Kevin will remain here. Tommen will remain here. You will remain here. Cersei's eyes widened. You cannot leave me with Kevin, she snapped. He will, He will do what is necessary, Tywin said, and there was finality in it. The city will not burn because you grew impatient. Cersei's hand twitched toward the lantern, toward the green glow beneath the cloth. And if the dead come here? She demanded. If your precious fire is needed? Tywin's gaze flicked to the lantern. The wildfire will be controlled, he said, by men who do not mistake vengeance for strategy. Cersei's mouth tightened. You mean men who do not have your blood, she said. Tywin stepped back. Blood is not loyalty, he said. It is an accident. Loyalty is choice. His eyes shifted at last to QYBURN. And you, he said to the former maester, will remember who gives you shelter. QYBURN bowed slightly, smooth as silk. Always, my lord. Tywin turned back to Cersei. If you move against Kevin while I am gone, he said quietly, if you attempt to seize power by stirring the faith or the streets, I will RIVERRUN and strip you of every privilege you mistake for right. Cersei's breath came fast. You would ruin me, she whispered. Tywin's gaze was flat. I would save the realm, he said. He left without another word, red cloaks falling in behind him. The door closed. The room felt suddenly smaller, suffocating. Cersei stood motionless, staring at the cracked seal on her letter, at the green glow under the cloth. Her hands shook, not with fear of the dead, but with fury at the living man who still held her on a leash. QYBURN waited until the footsteps faded. Then softly he said, there are other ways to gain strength, your grace. Cersei's eyes lifted, sharp. Such as? She demanded. QYBURN's smile was faint, secretive. Men, he said, monsters, the kind that do not require the faith's blessing. Cersei stared at him, and in her gaze the green light of wildfire flickered like a promise. PENTOS smelled of citrus and salt and foreign flowers, a sweetness that made Tyrion Lannister's stomach turn. He sat at Illyrio Mopatis's table with a goblet of wine that never seemed to empty and felt, for the first time in a long time, truly far from home. The manse was a palace of marble and silk, dripping with wealth. Every surface gleamed, every servant bowed. It should have felt like safety, felt like exile. Illyrio held a letter in thick fingers, seal broken. His cheeks jiggled when he laughed softly. Oh, my little lion, he rumbled, voice rich with amusement. Westeros remains entertaining even when you are not there to stir it. Tyrion's eyes narrowed. Entertaining is not the word I choose, he said. Varys stood near the window, hands folded in his sleeves, gaze on the distant sea as if he could see across it to a continent of knives. What does it say? Tyrion asked him, though the letter was in Illyrio's hand. Illyrio waved it. Your father lives, he said cheerfully, and he is causing quite a stir. Tyrion's mouth went dry. He had dreamed of Tywin's death like a drunk dreamed of the next cup. He had felt the weight of the crossbow, the cold shock of what he had done. In those dreams, Tywin had been a corpse and Tyrion had been free. Now the words your father lives fell into the room like a stone into still water, ripples spreading through every thought. How? Tyrion said, voice hoarse. How does he live? Illyrio shrugged with theatrical helplessness. Bad luck, he said. Or good, depending on your taste. Tyrion's hands tightened around his goblet. He should be dead, he muttered. Varys turned from the window. His expression was calm, but his eyes were thoughtful. Tywin Lannister is not a man who dies easily, Varys said. Tyrion barked a humorless laugh. Tell me about it, he said, and drank to hide the twist in his face. Illyrio leaned forward, lowering his voice as if sharing a delicious secret. It says he has proof of walking dead, he said. A corpse brought to King's Landing in chains. Tyrion froze, wine halfway to his lips. A corpse, he repeated. Varys's gaze sharpened. The Night's Watch has been sending ravens for years, he said softly. Most lords ignored them. My father doesn't ignore threats, Tyrion said, and the realization made his skin prickle. He must have seen something. Illyrio's smile widened. He did, he said. And now he sends orders like arrows, grain, men, fire. Illyrio tapped the letter against the table. He even speaks of traveling north himself. Tyrion stared at the wine, at his reflection warped in the dark liquid. Tywin Lannister, riding north. The image did not fit. His father belonged in a hall of stone and gold, issuing commands while other men died. Maybe he's gone mad, Tyrion said, though he did not believe it. Varys's voice was mild. Or perhaps the world has finally offered him a threat he cannot intimidate into submission, he said. Tyrion's laugh came again bitter. How poetic, he said. The great Tywin Lannister, brought low by a walking corpse. He drank and the wine tasted like ashes. Illyrio watched him with lively curiosity. Does this trouble you? Illyrio asked. You wished him dead. I did, Tyrion admitted, and the honesty cut. But I also wished. I don't know what I wished. He rubbed his temple with 2 fingers. I wished for him to stop being my father. Varys's gaze softened slightly. We cannot choose our fathers, he said. We can only choose what we become despite them. Tyrion snorted. And what do we become now? He asked. If the dead are real and my father is marching north to meet them, what does that do to your grand plans? He looked at Varys. You wanted a realm broken enough to accept Daenerys Targaryen. If Tywin holds it together, Varys's expression remained composed. The realm does not need to be broken, he said. It needs to be hungry for a better ruler. He glanced at Illyrio. A great threat can create such hunger. Illyrio's eyes gleamed. Imagine it, he said, spreading his hands. The people of Westeros terrified, their lords squabbling, and then dragons. He practically purred the word. A queen who brings fire to fight ice. A savior. Tyrion's mouth twisted. Or a conqueror, he said. My father will not kneel to a savior. He will try to put her in a box, like everything else. Varys's voice was quiet. Then perhaps, he said, the coming darkness will force even Tywin Lannister to choose between pride and survival. Tyrion stared at the map on the table, at the familiar outline of Westeros. He traced the King's Road north with a finger, remembering it. Dust, heat, then cold, and finally snow. He remembered Winterfell's gray walls. He remembered the wall a legend made stone. You are saying we should sail to Daenerys anyway, Tyrion said. Illyrio's smile was indulgent. That was always the plan, he said. Your father's stubbornness only makes it more necessary. Tyrion's throat tightened. And if my father dies fighting the dead, he said almost to himself, then what? Varys's gaze held his. Then the realm will change, he said simply, and we must be there when it does. Tyrion set his goblet down carefully, as if the sound might shatter him. In his mind, Tywin's face rose. Cold eyes, hard mouth, certainty like stone. Tyrion had thought he had escaped that certainty. Now it followed him across the sea, wearing a new shape, winter. He laughed softly because if he did not laugh he might choke. Very well, he said. Let us go find a queen with dragons. He lifted his eyes to Varys. If the world ends, at least we'll end it with style. Varys's lips curved faintly. That, he said, is one thing you have always understood. Stannis Baratheon looked as if the cold had been forged into him. He stood in Castle Black's courtyard with ice clinging to the edges of his beard. His jaw set, his eyes like chips of flint. Men moved around him. His own knights in weathered mail, black brothers in patched cloaks, free folk prisoners guarded with spear points. The air smelled of smoke and snow and old blood. Jon Snow watched him from across the yard, feeling the uneasy pull of politics settling over the wall like fresh frost. Stannis had saved them, yes. He had broken the wildlings' host, driven them scattering. But Stannis did not save without demanding. Davos Seaworth stood close to Stannis, hands tucked into his sleeves against the cold, eyes alert and human. Beside them, Melisandre of Ass High was a red stain against the gray world. her ruby catching torchlight as if it held a flame of its own. She watched Jon with unsettling calm, as if she saw something behind his face. A shout rose from the gate. Riders entered, cloaks crimson even beneath travel stains. The color looked obscene against the snow, as if someone had spilled fresh blood onto the yard. Ser Davin Marbrand dismounted with stiff movements, boots crunching on ice. He carried a letter in a leather case, held as carefully as a dagger. Behind him, his men looked wary, eyes darting to black brothers on the walkways, to Stannis' knights, to the wall looming above like judgment. Jon's hand moved unconsciously toward Longclaw's hilt. Lannisters and Stannis in the same yard felt like a spark tossed into dry straw. Marbrand approached Stannis with a measured bow, not deep enough to be submission. "Lord Stannis Baratheon," he said, voice steady. "I bear a message from the hand of the king, Lord Tywin Lannister." Stannis' mouth tightened. "Hand of the king," he repeated, and the title sounded like an insult. "There is only one king." Davos's gaze flicked toward Marbrand, then toward Jon, as if silently pleading for restraint. Marbrand did not flinch. He drew out the letter and held it forward. "The letter bears the seal of King Tommen Baratheon," he said, "and the seal of the hand." Stannis' eyes narrowed. "You bring me a boy's wax," he said, "and a lion's arrogance." Melisandre's voice slid into the cold air like smoke. "The darkness gathers," she murmured. "Even lions will burn." Stannis did not look at her. His gaze stayed on Marbrand. "Speak," he commanded. "Do not waste my time with seals." Marbrand's jaw tightened. "Lord Tywin offers supplies," he said. "Food, fuel, men, weapons where possible. In exchange, he requests coordination, intelligence, reports of the enemy beyond the wall. He requests that you hold the wall, and that you do not move south in a way that fractures the realm when it must unite." Stannis' laugh was short and humorless. "He requests," he said. "He offers me crumbs in exchange for obedience." Marbrand's eyes hardened. "He offers you what the South can spare," he said, "because if he wall falls, the South dies too." He paused, then added, "He also offers you a truce of sorts. Not recognition, but cooperation." Stannis' face went cold enough to rival the ice. "Cooperation," he echoed. "Does Tywin Lannister think the dead care whose seal sits on the throne?" Jon spoke before the argument could sharpen further. "The dead don't care," he said, "which is why we need every sword we can get." Stannis' gaze cut to Jon. "And you," he said, "need to remember your place." Jon's jaw tightened. "My place is keeping the wall standing," he said. While kings argue, a murmur rose from the Black brothers on the walkways. Some faces tightened with approval. Others looked afraid. Castle Black had seen too many commanders die because men with crowns used it as a pawn. Davos stepped forward, voice calm. "My lord," he said to Stannis, "whatever we think of Tywin Lannister, food is food. Men are men. The Watch is starving. The free folk prisoners will starve too if we do not feed them." Stannis' gaze flicked to Davos, then back to Marbrand. "And what does Tywin demand of me in truth?" he asked. "That I remain here while he marches north to play hero? That I let him claim the glory of defending the realm?" Marbrand's expression remained controlled, but Jon saw tension in his shoulders. The man had stood before whites. He had watched dead eyes burn blue. Pride must have felt small beside that. "Lord Tywin does not seek glory," Marbrand said slowly. "He seeks survival and control, as he always has." Stannis' eyes narrowed further. "Control," he said, and the word was a blade. "He will not have mine." Melisandre's lips curved faintly. "The Lord of Light requires sacrifice," she murmured. "Pride is often the first." Stannis' jaw tightened. "Enough," he snapped at her, then looked at Marbrand again. "Tell Tywin," he said, voice hard, "that I will take his supplies, not as a favor, as tribute owed by the realm to its true king." He stepped closer, close enough that Marbrand could smell cold iron and smoke on him. And tell him this: I will march south when I choose. I will take Winterfell. I will take my throne. If the dead come, they will find a king ready to burn them. Marbrand held his gaze. Lord Tywin will not bend the knee, he said. Stannis' mouth twisted. Then he will break, he said, like every man who refuses what is right. Davos's eyes tightened with frustration, but he did not speak. Jon watched the exchange like a man watching two cliffs grind together, knowing the sparks could burn everything between them. Marbrand inclined his head once, stiff. I will carry your words, he said, and I will carry this as well. He reached into his saddlebag and drew out a small bundle wrapped in oilcloth. He unwrapped it enough to reveal a shard of dragonglass, black and sharp. This kills wights, he said. It kills the other servants. The South does not have enough of it. The greatest stores are on Dragonstone. Stannis. His eyes flicked to the shard. For a heartbeat, something like calculation passed over his face. Dragonstone was his seat. His caves held the black stone. He had heard the old stories, but now the story was in his yard. You will not have my dragonglass, Stannis said, reflexively possessive. Jon's breath puffed in the cold. If you keep it all, Jon said, we all die with it. Stannis' gaze snapped back to him, furious. You grow bold for a bastard, he said. Jon's voice was steady. I grow desperate, he replied. And so should you. Silence fell, thick with cold. The torches hissed as snow fell into their flames. Stannis stared at Jon for a long moment, then turned away as if refusing to be moved by a crow's words. He looked back at Marbrand. Tell Tywin, he said, that if he comes north, he comes into my war as well. Winterfell will be mine. Marbrand's mouth tightened. Lord Tywin will not hand the north to a man who declares himself king, he said. Stannis' eyes flashed. Then we will see which of us the realm chooses to follow when the darkness comes, he said. Davos's voice slipped in, low and urgent. My lord, he said, we can argue crowns later. We need to keep the wall fed now. Stannis did not answer. He waved a gloved hand sharply. Take the supplies, he ordered Marbrand. Leave the letter, and leave my sight. Marbrand bowed once, anger restrained by discipline. He stepped back, signaling his men to begin unloading wagons of food and barrels of pitch. The Black brothers watched with wary hunger. As Marbrand turned away, Melisandre's gaze lingered on him, then on Jon. The night is dark, she whispered, almost affectionately, and full of terrors. Jon did not respond. He watched crimson cloaks move through the yard, and he thought of Tywin Lannister's letter somewhere far south, full of commands and certainty. Winter did not care about certainty, but men did. The Tyrells arrived as if nothing in the world could truly shake their poise. Marjorie entered first, her gown a deep green that made the red keep stone seem dull by comparison. Tommen brightened at the sight of her in a way he never brightened for his mother's kisses or his grandfather's stern praise. Olenna followed, cane tapping, eyes sharp enough to carve. Tywin did not rise from his chair, but his attention settled on them like a weight. Kevin stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, watching the courtyard below where wagons were being loaded. Bread and salt sat untouched on a silver tray. The ritual of guest right felt almost ridiculous under the shadow of winter, but Tywin had insisted on it. Traditions like walls were useful even when people pretended they were not. You are leaving, Olenna said without preamble, as if spitting out a fact she disliked. Tywin's gaze did not flicker. Yes, he said. Marjorie's smile was polite, but her eyes searched his face. To the north, she said softly. Tywin nodded. To ensure the realm does not fall apart while lords argue whether the dead are real. Olenna snorted. The dead are real, she said. I've buried enough husbands to know that. Tommen shifted uncomfortably. Marjorie's hand moved to his shoulder, a gentle anchor. My grandfather intends to keep you safe, she murmured to him. Tommen's eyes darted to Tywin. Will you come back? He asked in a small voice. Tywin's jaw tightened. He had never been good with tenderness. He understood duty, not comfort. I intend to, he said. Olenna's eyes narrowed. And if you don't? She asked. Tywin's gaze slid to her. Then Kevin will hold the capital, he said, as if discussing an arrangement for grain rather than mortality. Olenna's cane tapped once. Kevin is not you, she said. Tywin's mouth barely moved. No, he agreed. That is why he will survive. Marjorie's smile faded slightly. Lord Tywin, she said carefully, the realm cannot afford to lose you and then be devoured by chaos. The streets are already uneasy. People whisper of monsters. They whisper of curses. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the tray, toward bread and salt. They will need something to hold on to while you are gone. Tywin leaned forward. You mean a symbol, he said. Marjorie held his gaze. I mean stability, she replied, and her voice was steady. A king and queen seen together. A court that does not look like a battlefield. The people must believe the throne is strong. Cersei would hate this, Tywin thought. The idea of Marjorie as the visible center while Tywin was away would gnaw at her like a rat. Which meant it was useful. What do you propose? Tywin asked. Marjorie's hand squeezed Tommen's shoulder gently. We will be crowned sooner, she said. Not for vanity, for the realm. Olenna lifted her chin. And you will ensure my granddaughter is not left alone in a pit of lions, she said. Especially your daughter. Tywin's gaze was Lat. Cersei will not touch her, he said. Olenna's laugh was sharp. That sounds like a prayer, she said. Not a promise. Tywin's eyes narrowed. It is a promise, he said. Kevin's voice came softly from the window. We can arrange for the Tyrell household guard to remain near the royal apartments, he offered. Discreetly, Olenna's eyes flicked to him, then back to Tywin. Discreetly? She repeated as if tasting the word. Very well. But if anything happens to Marjorie while you play at war in snow? I do not play, Tywin said. Olenna's gaze did not soften. No, she agreed. You do something far worse. You win. Tywin's fingers touched the map where Winterfell was marked. If the realm survives, he said, it will not be because of crowns and gowns. It will be because men marched when they did not want to, because lords gave grain they would rather hoard, because fear was turned into action. His gaze lifted. Highgarden will send more than wagons. Marjorie's expression remained calm. Highgarden will send what the realm requires, she said, and the words were careful, but there was steel beneath them. Olenna leaned back slightly, studying Tywin with the same sharpness she used to study enemies. You are asking for our sons, she said. Tywin's voice remained level. I am asking for your men, he corrected. Your sons may stay if you wish. But if the dead come, they will not spare your sons because they are precious to you. Tommen swallowed. His small fingers clenched and unclenched on the armrest of his chair. Marjorie's hand slid down his shoulder and took his hand briefly. A simple gesture that made him breathe easier. She looked at Tywin again. If you ride north, she said, then let the realm see that you ride not as a Lannister alone, but as the hand of the king. Her gaze held his. Let them see banners together. Lions and roses. The realm united. Tywin considered. The sight of the great houses moving together could hold lords in line better than a dozen ravens. People followed strength. The image of unity was a kind of strength. Very well, Tywin said. When I depart, House Tyrell's banners will ride with mine. Olenna's eyes narrowed. And if you use that unity to tighten your hold? She asked. Tywin's gaze was cold. If the realm lives, he said, it will live under order. You may call it tyranny if that comforts you. I call it survival. Olenna's laugh was quiet. Survival, she echoed. An ugly word for an ugly time. Tywin rose, signaling the meeting's end. Marjorie stood too graceful. Olenna pushed herself up with her cane. As they moved toward the door, Marjorie paused beside Tommen and pressed a kiss to his hair. Be brave, she whispered. Tommen's eyes went to Tywin. "I will," he said, though his voice shook. Tywin watched him, and for a heartbeat he saw not a king but a boy being asked to carry a world. He felt something in his chest that he refused to name. When the Tyrells left, Kevin spoke quietly. "They will hold you to this," he said. Tywin's gaze stayed on the map. "Let them," he said. "If they hold me to anything, let it be that the realm survives." The Iron Throne was meant to inspire fear. It succeeded even on days when it was empty. Tywin Lannister stood at the base of the jagged seat with Tommen beside him, and he watched the boy's eyes climb the twisted swords as if measuring how high the fall would be. The throne loomed above them like a warning made metal. "Do you know why Aegon built it like this?" Tywin asked. Tommen swallowed. To show his power," he said uncertainly. "To remind every king that rule cuts," Tywin said. "A comfortable throne breeds soft kings." Tommen's small fingers tightened around the edge of his tunic. "Will I be cut?" he asked. Tywin looked down at him. In the boy's face he saw Joffrey's arrogance without the cruelty, and that was a mercy. He also saw the realm's fragility. "If you are foolish," he said. "Yes." Kevin stood to the side, a quiet witness. Behind a column, Cersei lingered in shadow, her presence a sharp itch Tywin refused to scratch. Kingsguard in white armor stood like statues, their faces unreadable behind discipline. Tommen lifted his chin slightly, trying to appear brave. "I don't want to be foolish," he said. Tywin's voice softened by a fraction. "Then listen," he said. He gestured toward the throne. "Men will tell you you are chosen by gods," he said. "They will tell you you are beloved. They will tell you you deserve the world because you were born into it." Tywin's gaze narrowed. "Those men want something." Tommen blinked, absorbing. Even Grand Maester Pycelle?" he asked. Tywin's mouth twitched. "Especially Pycelle," he said. A faint sound came from behind the column. Cersei's breath, sharp with offense. Tywin ignored it. "A king must know who he is," Tywin continued, "and what he is not. You are not a warrior like Robert. You are not a monster like your brother. You are..." He paused, searching for a word that would not break the boy. "You are young. And you are the center of the realm whether you wish it or not." Tommen's eyes were wide. "I don't want people to die," he whispered. Tywin felt a flicker of something that might have been respect or regret. "People will die," he said bluntly. "The question is how many, and whether they're deaths by something." Tommen's voice trembled. "My mother says you only care about the family," he said, the words cautious, as if spoken through fear. Tywin's eyes flicked briefly toward the column where Cersei hid, then back to Tommen. "The family is the realm," Tywin said. "Without the realm, the family is nothing but a name carved on a stone." Tommen hesitated, then asked, "Are the dead really coming?" Tywin's jaw tightened. He could have lied. He could have offered comfort. Comfort was another kind of lie. "Yes," he said, "or something like them. There is a darkness beyond the wall that men have forgotten. It has been awakened." He studied Tommen's face. "You will be afraid. You should be. But fear does not excuse weakness." Tommen swallowed. "What do I do?" he asked, voice small. "While you're gone." Tywin's gaze held him. "You do what kings do," he said. "You sit in judgment when it is put before you. You show the realm that the throne is steady. You let Kevin speak for you when you do not know what to say." He paused. "And you do not let your mother pull you into her storms." From the shadows, Cersei's voice cut in, brittle. "You speak as if I am poison," she said. Tywin turned his head slightly, not fully granting her the honor of his attention. "You are," he said. Cersei stepped out from behind the column, her black gown whispering over stone. Her face was composed, but her eyes were furious. "He is my son," she said. "And he is the king," Tywin replied. "He belongs to the realm." Cersei's mouth tightened. "You would take him from me?" she hissed. Tywin's voice was calm, and that calm was the cruelest thing in the room. "I would save him from you," he said. Tommen's eyes darted between them, panic rising. "Mother," he whispered. Cersei's face softened instantly, anger folding into something like tenderness. She moved to Tommen and cupped his cheek. "My love," she murmured. "You must not listen to him. He wants to make you cold like him." Tywin's gaze remained steady. "Cold men survive winter," he said. Cersei's eyes flashed. "And warm men?" she demanded. Tywin's voice did not change. "Warm men die," he said. Silence fell. Even the Kingsguard seemed to hold their breath. Tommen's mouth trembled. "I don't want anyone to die," he whispered again, and this time it sounded like prayer. Tywin's hand moved, surprisingly gentle, and rested on the boy's shoulder. "Then do your duty," he said. "A king's mercy is not in wishing death away. It is in choosing the lesser suffering." Cersei stared at Tywin's hand on Tommen as if it were a theft. Her fingers tightened on her son's face. "You will leave," she said, voice shaking. "And when you do, you will be gone. And the realm will see that it does not need you." Tywin met her gaze fully then, and his eyes were as pale as winter light. "The realm has always needed someone," he said. "If not me, then another." His mouth tightened. "Do not mistake that for victory." He turned back to Tommen. "Walk with Kevin," he instructed. "Listen to him, and remember what you saw in the courtyard." Tommen nodded, eyes wet. He reached out, hesitated, then took Kevin's hand. Kevin's grip was steady, warm in a way Tywin's never was. As Tommen and Kevin moved away down the long hall, Cersei remained, staring at Tywin. For a moment, Tywin saw the child she had been, furious at being denied anything. Then the Queen Mother reasserted herself. "You will die in the snow," Cersei whispered, and her voice was almost a blessing. Tywin's gaze did not waver. "Perhaps," he said, "but you will not kill the realm while I still breathe." He turned away from her and looked up at the Iron Throne, at the twisted swords that had cut kings and would cut more. For the first time in many years, Tywin Lannister felt the weight of history not as a story but as a blade pressing against his throat. He welcomed it. Better a blade you could see than a dagger in darkness. The day Tywin Lannister rode from King's Landing, the city did not cheer. It watched. The streets were lined with small folk wrapped in patched cloaks, faces pinched by cold and uncertainty. Children clung to mothers' skirts. Men held their caps in their hands as if unsure whether to bow or throw stones. Above them, the Red Keep's walls loomed, indifferent. Snow flurried in thin, hesitant flakes, nothing like the heavy snows of the north, but enough to make the air taste sharper. Enough to remind the city that winter was no longer a distant word. Tywin rode at the head of the column on a dark horse, armor hidden beneath a heavy crimson cloak lined with fur. His face was impassive, but his eyes missed nothing. The way people leaned back from the wagons as if the barrels themselves carried plague. The way gold cloaks stood too stiff as if fearing judgment. The way some men made the sign of the seven and whispered prayers as the banners passed. Behind him marched disciplined Westermen, steel glinting dully beneath gray sky. Interspersed among them were Tyrell men in green, their rose sigils bright against the winter haze. The sight of red and green together was deliberate. Tywin knew the power of an image. Wagons rolled in the center of the host, their wheels groaning. Barrels of pitch, bundles of dried wood, crates of iron tools, and, guarded more tightly than gold, iron-cased jars wrapped in thick cloth and straw. Wildfire made transportable, controlled only by the threat of Tywin's wrath and the fear of accidental catastrophe. Red cloaks walked beside those wagons with halberds, eyes hard, hands near torches that were not lit. Fire was safety and danger both. At the gate, Kevin sat on horseback, face grim. He had insisted on riding out with Tywin to the last possible moment, as if keeping his brother in sight could keep him alive. "You will have ravens daily," Kevin said quietly when Tywin drew near. His voice was low, meant for Tywin alone. "And if the city stirs, I will cut the rot before it spreads. Tywin's gaze flicked up toward the balcony where Tommen stood. The boy was small against stone, but he wore his crown and did not hide. Marjorie stood beside him, her hand wrapped around his. Her face was composed, serene as ever, but her grip on the boy was tight enough to be real. Behind them, Cersei stood in shadow, her posture perfect, her smile frozen. Tommen lifted his free hand in an awkward wave. His eyes were bright, and Tywin knew the boy was trying not to cry. Tywin did not wave back. He lifted 2 fingers in a small salute, acknowledgement rather than comfort. Tommen's shoulders straightened as if that small gesture had given him armor. Cersei's eyes met Tywin's across the distance. Her smile did not reach them. In her gaze, Tywin saw something fierce and hungry. She would not wait quietly. She never had. Tywin turned away before the weight of it could become a chain. The gates opened fully, and the column began to move onto the King's Road, leaving the city's stink behind. Outside the walls, the air was cleaner, colder. Fields stretched, brown and lifeless, waiting for spring that might not come. As the Red Keep receded behind them, a murmur rose among the small folk. Not cheers, but the low, anxious sound of people watching their protector ride away and wondering what would be left in his absence. Tywin did not look back. He had spent his life making the realm bend to his will. Now the realm faced something that did not bend at all. His men marched, hoofs thudded, wagon wheels creaked, the banners snapped in the wind. Somewhere behind him, King's Landing continued. People buying bread, arguing over coins, praying in septs, living as if life were permanent. Tywin rode as if the world could end tomorrow, because now he knew it could. By nightfall, they made camp beyond the city's glow, fires burning low under watchful eyes. Tywin sat in his tent with maps spread before him, with letters waiting to be sent. He listened to the wind outside and imagined it was the sound of distant wings. He slept little. When he did, he dreamed of ice. The neck felt like a place the world had forgotten. The King's Road narrowed into a causeway of packed earth and slick stone, flanked by black water and reeds that hissed in the wind. Mist hung low, clinging to everything. The air smelled of rot and stagnant pools. Even the birds sounded cautious here, their calls muted as if afraid to disturb something sleeping beneath the mud. Moat CAILIN rose from the marsh like broken teeth. Its towers were ruins. Massive stone cylinders cracked and slumped, their tops jagged. Once, this place had guarded the north against southern armies. Now it guarded only memory. A handful of men could hold it against thousands if they knew the land. That had always been the North's advantage. It could make outsiders bleed simply by forcing them to march through it. Tywin Lannister reined in his horse and studied the ruin without expression. The cold here was sharper than in the Crownlands, a wet chill that crept into bones. A thin sheet of ice filmed the stagnant pools, delicate and treacherous. Ravens circled overhead, dark shapes against gray sky. A small group waited near the causeway, northern horsemen in dark furs, their faces hard and pale from weather. At their head stood a man with Bolton colors on his cloak, the flayed man's sigil stark. He bowed when Tywin approached, deep enough to show deference, not deep enough to show love. "My Lord Hand," the man said. "I am Walton," he added after a beat, as if his name mattered. "Sent by Lord Roose Bolton, Warden of the North." Warden of the North. Tywin's mouth tightened slightly at the title. He had granted it, used it, and never trusted it. "Lord Bolton sends his regards," Walton continued. His eyes flicked toward the Tyrell banners behind Tywin, then back. "He sends word that the North is unsettled." Tywin's gaze remained on the man's face. "The North is always unsettled," he said. "Winter settles it." Walton's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Yes, my lord," he said. "Lord Bolton requests to know why the Hand rides north with such a host." The question was polite. The suspicion beneath it was not. Tywin's voice was calm. "Because the wall is threatened," he said. "Because the realm requires defense." Because I will not trust the North's survival to men who have proven eager to change banners when it suits them. Walton's eyes flickered. Lord Bolton has been loyal, he said carefully. Tywin's gaze hardened a fraction. Lord Bolton has been useful, he corrected. Loyalty is something else. Behind Walton, northern horsemen shifted. Their hands hovered near axe hafts. They did not like hearing their warden reduced to a tool. Tywin did not care. Walton cleared his throat. Lord Bolton invites you to Winterfell, he said, to discuss preparations. Preparations, Tywin repeated, and there was dry humor in the word. He looked past Walton toward the swamp. In the mist, the land seemed endless, a maze meant to swallow men whole. Winterfell will be the ANVIL, Tywin said. If the enemy comes through the wall, it will come down the King's Road. It will come to Winterfell. Walton's brow furrowed. Enemy, he said cautiously. You speak of wildlings? Tywin's eyes narrowed. Wildlings are men, he said. Men can be killed. The threat beyond the wall is not merely men. Walton's face tightened with skepticism. Stories, he murmured. Tywin's voice sharpened slightly. I have seen proof, he said. If Lord Bolton doubts, he may doubt with his eyes when I arrive. He leaned forward slightly in the saddle. Tell him this. The realm will require Winterfell's stores, Winterfell's walls, Winterfell's men. If he hoards, if he delays, if he plots. Tywin's gaze held Walton's. Then the North will learn what happens when men mistake winter for a rumor. Walton swallowed. Yes, my lord, he said, and his voice had lost some of its confidence. Tywin gestured, and his host began to move again, boots and hoofs pressing forward onto northern soil. As they passed Moat Cailin's broken towers, the wind moaned through cracks in stone, a sound like distant wailing. The marsh gave way slowly to fir trees and darker ground. The air grew colder with every mile. The sky seemed lower. Snow began to fall in earnest, soft at first, then thicker, the flakes clinging to cloaks and hair. Tywin rode at the head of his column and felt the North close around him like a fist. He understood then why the Starks had ruled here for so long. The land itself demanded strength. A raven swooped low and landed on a tree branch near the road, watching the passing army with one dark eye. Tywin's gaze met it briefly, and he felt an irrational chill, as if the bird carried more than hunger in its gaze. He did not look away first. The column pressed northward, banners snapping, wagons creaking. Behind them, the causeway through the neck lay like a thin thread back to the south. Ahead, the white world waited, Winterfell, the wall, and the darkness beyond. Tywin Lannister rode into the north as if he were riding into a war he could still control. But the air here tasted different, tasted like old stories waking. And somewhere far ahead, unseen and patient, the cold was already marching south to meet him.